Pipe down! Pipe down, I say. We've got a joke to explain. Now this one I happen to know comes from a t-shirt. A t-shirt. Yes. And it is... it's okay if you don't like bird watching. It's kind of a smart people hobby anyway. So this is... how to describe this? It's definitely a joke. It's definitely a joke. Let me think. We get rid of that. And, yeah, so, right, well, let's start. Hobbies are basically ways of passing the time, aren't they? They're just things that we do that we can occupy ourselves with, which is sort of suggests that they're... I think there's a line between what is and isn't a hobby, you know. And I think it has to have a certain level of activity and sometimes a certain level or certain element of achievement to it as well. And that achievement could be, you know, creating something, or it could just be completing tasks in a sense. So collecting is a hobby. And in a sense, bird watching is collecting, although there's more to it than that. Because it's also about understanding the thing that you're collecting. In the same way that railway enthusiasm, it's not about collecting entirely about collecting the train numbers. It's also about, you know, having a wide and deep understanding of railway engines and networks and the like, stations. Yes. So anyway, bird watching is a hobby, and as its name suggests, what you're basically doing is you are seeing and identifying dinosaurs, birds. Yes. Sometimes through, and this is factually inaccurate rendering. Which has become factual through a pair of binoculars. Don't have to have binoculars to be a bird watcher, but they help. In fact, I was quite pleased with myself the other day. We have ring-necked parakeets, I think they are, in London. And I used to visit Brockwell Park quite frequently because there were quite a few of them there. And you'd go along and you'd have a look at the parakeets. But I've since moved away from Brockwell Park within London, and I went to a nearby park and suddenly heard a hobby is also a bird. It is Caramba, yes, which brings us on to Sabutio. The guy who invented Sabutio wanted to call Sabutio hobby, and the games manufacturers essentially said we can't call it a hobby. That's ridiculous. I think hobby is something one does for the love of it. Yes. Recognise that one. It's a cassowary. Thank you, yeah, so I was in this park and I heard this particular screech and I thought, hello. That be a ring-necked parakeet. And then I sort of essentially tracked's too strong a word. I worked out where the noise was coming from, and then I found them. Yeah, but I think I'm right in saying this, Osric, that you there's sort of different levels of spotting, and actually just hearing the call. If you can correctly identify the call, that's a spot. It's a low level spot, but it's still a spot. It still counts, doesn't it? Did you manage to film it, and did you use a Dutch angle? I didn't use a Dutch angle, sadly. Now, a Dutch angle, for those of you who don't know, is when in cinema the camera is at an angle, sort of like what I do on moving staircases, escalators, is to stand at a funny angle. Now, often the Dutch angle is employed going from a normal angle to a Dutch angle, to emphasise the movement from. Usually, what it denotes is an unusual space. You're going from like normality to abnormality, and you would relay that with a Dutch angle. It can do indeed. There you go. So, Osric has a T-shirt with this on. It's okay if you don't like bird watching. It's kind of a smart people hobby. Anyway, it's essentially suggesting that the reason the person who has just said, "Oh, I don't like bird watching," is suggesting that the reason why that person doesn't like bird watching, because the person who's saying that is kind of like throwing shade on the hobby by saying that. Throwing shade means to sort of put down. And so the response is kind of a smart. It's basically saying, the reason why you don't like bird watching is because you're not very bright. You gotta be, yeah. And that's why it's funny. Is you've essentially taken this insult and you've turned it around and bounced it back in the same way that a duck's quack echoes. You've bounced it back on the person that said it. Yes. The ultimate spot is when you write the bird's number down in a little book. Absolutely, Plankton. Absolutely. So, Osric, have I made sense of all of that? Have I explained the joke to your satisfaction? I should probably delete that circle for later. And if it has, then we'll get back to whatever the heck was. Yes, I think so. Good, you think so? That's the kind of confidence I look for in my respondents. So thank you. In that case, joke explained.